Please welcome our next speaker, Phil Nash from Twilio. Twilio is a big platform for developers, for mobile and other applications, cloud-based, where you can use voice communication and other services like authentication as a service. And they have about more than 500,000 developers, so it's a really big player in the mobile communications industry. So welcome, Phil.
Hi, good afternoon. That's absolutely wonderful thing. I'm absolutely delighted to have somebody playing piano. Thank you so much for the introductory music there. Hi, everyone. My name is Phil Nash. I'm a developer evangelist at Twilio. And as just introduced, Twilio is kind of a communications platform that allows you to build in voice, video, and other messaging applications into your applications using the tools, languages, and frameworks that you already know. I'm not here to talk about Twilio today. Rather, I'm here because I'm kind of excited. I think we are in a golden age of development right now. The amount of power and the amount of reach that any developer on the planet today has is absolutely amazing. It's quite simple. We have almost unlimited reach. There are 3.4 billion internet users out there all around the world, and there's more every day, and it's absolutely amazing. And amongst that, there are only kind of 20 million or so developers. So that difference between us and the amount of people that we can reach just with a line of code or anything like that is absolutely incredible to me, and I think that's absolutely amazing. And that's not the only thing that we have going for us. If you take a think back kind of 20, 25 years to the 90s and how software was developed and sold to people, things are so different right now, and I'm sure that's kind of obvious. Like, this industry moves really quickly. But kind of going back to then, you can imagine that when you wanted to build something, it was a whole it was an awful lot of effort. And this is a favorite quote of mine from Carl Sagan back in 1980. If you wish to make apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe. Back in, when development was, starting up and becoming big in, say, the 90s, like, if you wanted to build an application, you had to basically invent everything. And that's, that led to the fact that, like, software was sold as this kind of, this impossible thing that you couldn't build it yourself. Software was sold to other companies as as applications to solve their problems, which is fine. But then those kind of applications then got built up into application suites, and those kind of things all solve problems as long as they solve the problem that the software company kind of built them for in the first place. And that meant that putting applications together was kind of like putting together a puzzle. You had many different pieces, and they would all fit together kind of nicely, but only if that's the application that you wanted to build. If that's what you wanted to use. And that, I don't think, for me, is just not a great way of building, because if you can see, like, with a puzzle, there is, of course, only one way you can put it together. There's only one way to get that picture at the end, or indeed, in this case, that blank white tile. So talking of puzzles and talking of children's toys, like, I was growing up in the 90s, so I used to like playing with Lego, and I had kind of the pirate set, which is nice, I like pirates. Anybody else? But what was great about this was, like, you had that picture on the box, you had the instructions, you can build up the thing you wanted to see, the thing you bought in the first place. But when you got bored of that, you could take it apart and make different stuff with it, make anything you wanted, really. It was kind of an endless fount of creativity. And so I used to take it apart, and I wanted to build like island paradise kind of thing with tree houses and things like that. Like, these trees had like Lego bits on the top of them where you could just build things on top of that, and I used to love doing that. And I built up all sorts of different stuff. And that's the way I feel that, that development should be a bit more like. And that's what I think that we should be doing with software today. You know, we're in a much better position, obviously, than 20, 25 years ago. You know, back then you might have been building in C or Perl or C++ or something like that. Like 1990, like Ruby and Java were invented or released in 1995, and you know they've come an awfully long way since then. And you know nowadays our tool set is so much better, and we have more interesting newer languages like Swift or even things like Elixir, stuff like that. But like we also have the frameworks on which we can build on top of as well. I am a Ruby developer personally, as well as JavaScript a lot of the time. And you know, building on top of Rails, which has now been around for quite amazingly 11 years, since 2005. Building on top of that means we can get and do things a lot faster. And then on top of that, we also have the ability to build on top of composable APIs that live out there on the internet that we can use and augment and improve our applications with. I mean, you know, APIs have been around for a long time, and that's absolutely fine. And what bugged me back in the day, you know, kind of 10 years ago when I was starting out properly professionally developing, was that the APIs appearing were kind of all very self-serving. They were even kind of like 2006, I guess, was Twitter, and that kind of came out with this API which helped their platform grow an awful lot, but it was very much about building things for Twitter, not for yourself. It was not about plugging things together for your own application. And now eventually they kind of came up with it, like, you know, we have OAuth and things like that, where you can kind of do a sign-in with Twitter and things like that. But basically those APIs were for that platform, not for you. And nowadays, we have these APIs that you can put together. And my analogy very much is about building things like Lego. You can put things together like Lego bricks, and that's where we are right now. And those things, these composable APIs, allow us to build things that would never have been possible without them, or would have just taken an awfully long time. And I just want to think about telephony as an example for that. And now the telephone has been around for almost 150 years, and very little in the telephone has changed. You still kind of pick it up, dial a number, and talk to somebody. Like the biggest changes of effectively kind of mobile phones, where you didn't have to be attached by a cord to the wall in order to make those calls. But in reality, all we've done is change from like moving numbers in a rotary dial to pressing buttons to poking at a screen. And that's been the biggest kind of change in telephones in all that time. Because telephony is hard, because it is based on very physical things. This is a telephone exchange in Sweden a long time ago. Telephony is based on physical things, based on cables, based on having servers in your building, based on you know, all of that kind of stuff. And hardware is, whilst hardware is kind of an exciting future as we work with kind of Arduino and Internet of Things kind of things, back when we talk about telephony hardware, it just means it's expensive, it's slow to install, and it's hard to get up and running and hard to customize. And so I want to just show you very quickly kind of telephony API. Can you read this? Yes. Good. Telephony API that allows you to build into your applications just right now. So I'm just going to and this is kind of what we do at Twilio. Oops, don't do that. This is what we do at Twilio. And so if you want to do anything with telephony, you need a telephone number, and that's perfectly reasonable. So I'm just going to kind of buy one here in Bulgaria. That's going to be fun. I'm just going to buy a phone number for you. And there we go. This one is an unexpected error. Fantastic. Oh, maybe I won't do that. All right. I killed it. Fantastic. You know, I was worried that the internet was not going to work for me, but apparently the actual application is not going to work. Let's try that one more time. I'm going to try and buy this number. There we go. I need an address for that. Let's not buy a Bulgarian number. I'm going to buy one from the United Kingdom. It's going to work, don't you worry. I'm going to buy this number. I'm going to buy this number from that one. I'm going to buy this number from the UK. Not only do you get an introduction, but also sad mid-time music is wonderful. Cool. This is my number, and I'm going to do something with it right now. Hopefully, hopefully the rest of this is going to work. I'm going to build an application for messaging, and I'm going to. What happens is the idea here will be you'll be able to send a text message to this number, and the API is going to take that message and send it on to my application via an HTTP request, a webhook in this case. And this is going to be that URL. And that is a URL that I'm going to run on my laptop here right now. That's it running there. And so that is working. And this is that application. So I'm just going to, as I said, I'm a Ruby developer. I'm just going to build this out in Ruby. And I'm going to use the Sinatra framework. Is anybody else a Ruby developer in here? Anybody? One person, two. Okay, cool. 2 people. For anybody who doesn't know, Ruby is wonderful, and you should use it. But the Sinatra framework is really quite nice because it's very obvious what's going on, and that's what I'm going to use to show right now. So basically, Twilio is going to make a post request to my endpoint, to this messages endpoint, and that's where we can respond and tell it what to do. And we respond with capital letters. We respond with XML, and we just send back the response that we want to exist. And because we're, in this case, dealing with messaging, we can send a message back. And I'm just going to say, hello, Webit Festival. That's all I'm going to, oops, no, hang on, try this. Cool, so I'm just going to return that XML, and I'm going to start up start that application up. And what this means is you should be able to send a text message to that application and get that response back. So if you want to try and help me out with this, then send a text message to that. I know it's an international number, and those Bulgarian numbers weren't working quite so well for me, but I'll do it just to make sure it is working. So it's +44 7403 924 863. So if I send that, you should actually see the connection come through this tunnel in the background. There it was. We've had one at least. That was me. I should get a response back. There it is. Woo! And that's kind of interesting enough. That's the way that an API is making your application into more of an API. But what's quite good about it is that we can actually. Oops, that's not a real thing. We have a REST API in which you can then go and do other stuff with that. So if I require the kind of Twilio Ruby helper, again, I'm just doing this in Ruby, and set myself a REST client. Oops. Which I authenticate with my kind of username and password for the API, in this case, an account SID. And a password, auth token. then I can go and actually interact with that API right now and build that as part of my application. So I can kind of list out the messages that got sent into that number. Find a messages list. The ones to the number that I bought. And it might only have been me, but kind of I can run through that and I can print out those messages, for example. There we go. We got a few messages. Hello, test, and hello, it's me. Who's me? There we go, right there. Thank you. And so we can print those out. But what's quite cool is we can now actually make stuff happen with these things. So I can grab all the numbers that were sent, which is nice. I can use a Ruby map for this. That was the message, and I can just get out the message and the number it was sent from. I'm not going to show anybody your numbers because privacy and stuff. But with those numbers, I can call you back, which could be interesting. I can take all those numbers and use my client to create a call to your number from my number that I bought earlier. And then I just need to give it a URL. And again, this works kind of the same as the messages on the incoming version, in that it's going to ask what to do with that call once it's created. And so we need to build that. And I'm just going to copy most of this because it's kind of the same. What do we say? Calls there. And instead of messages in this case, we can actually do other stuff. So we have kind of a robot voice to say stuff, or you can play MP3s, or you can gather digits. So I could have you all send me your credit card details, and then I'd have a really good time. But I won't do that for right now. What's easier is to just kind of dial something, and you can just dial on to somebody else's number. But because there's 3 of us, I think, that have sent in a message so far, we can actually start up a conference call right now. The Webit conference. This all makes sense, right? And if I return that, we'll start a conference call, and so hitting that should mean that the phone will ring, and we'll all be kind of knocked into our own. There's a phone. Cool. That's me as well. So hi, who's there? No, we have an error. Okay, don't worry about that. Did I do something wrong there? Looks right. But we made phone calls happen, and that's that is something that really would have been really kind of hard before this kind of API was around. And so I encourage you that application development can be really, really simple when you build kind of on top of these composable APIs. And there are many of these things out there, and not just Twilio, obviously, but we kind of have, in terms of infrastructure, and I know we've talked a lot about DevOps today. Obviously, AWS is a huge thing, as well as plenty of other platforms which you can kind of automate and build on top of. Twilio is great for communications. Travis and CircleCI and other things like that in terms of continuous development. Payment is something you never want to really deal with. I know I've tried it in the past, and any kind of compliance with payment things is just is an absolutely awful nightmare of code. But there are happily people out there deciding to take on that nightmare for you. And Stripe is one, of course. Braintree and PayPal are others. And all of these days have this absolute conviction that making a nice API, making something that developers like yourselves want to work with, making it nice to work with. And so that's kind of my point for today, that if Lego allows every child to build the things, the experiences, the games, the toys that they want, then these APIs that are out there in the world right now allow us as developers and every company out there in the world to build the tools, the applications that we want, and do it without the stress of having to deal with the telephony networks, or with payment, or with hosting these things. And that is absolutely kind of the future that I want to be living in. I want to be able to put things together quickly and make powerful differences to the world. So APIs are very much our Lego bricks as developers, and that's something I'd love to consider and to chat about with you today. Because you can build up anything from a little business to rocket ships and the future. Fantastically, I believe this Lego structure is in NASA somewhere, and it's absolutely amazing, a part of a Building the Future series. And so all of us have this ability to write code and to touch people everywhere in the world via the incredible ability to distribute things via the internet and via applications and such. And we all have this ability to build amazing things. And it's just wonderful to be able to take these APIs, these frameworks, these tools that we have today, and put together the applications that we want to see in the world. And I encourage you to go out and do so and find the things that you find useful to build with. And that is, I have a flashing clock in front of me, so that's kind of all I have time for. But before I go, if you're interested in talking more about communications, telephony, and other kind of APIs and things like that, and security, then I would love to see you at Twilio's conference in San Francisco in May. It's May 24th, 25th in San Francisco. Come to Signal. It's going to be a fantastic conversation, a brilliant conference, much like this one, including a kick-ass party at the end as well. And if you use the code PNASH20, you get 20% off tickets. But that is all I have time for. Those are just some credits for the images I used. Thank you so much for listening. Go out and build stuff that you want to see in the world. My name's Phil Nash. I'm a developer evangelist for Twilio. Thank you.